Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to show you how to make seam allowances, sewing according to seam allowances easier. It's building it right into the machine. This is mine, and I have varying uh, spaces. I have, let's see, 5/8 here, I think 1 inch here. Looks a little bit more than 1 inch. I think the 1 inch is right there. And a 1/2 inch here, and then of course 3/8 of an inch. You're going to use all of those when you're making your garments. So let's show you how to make it. Okay, so the materials you'll need are, of course, one black or blue pen. You'll need a sewing gauge, just like this is by Dritz. You can get these on Amazon for like $3. Then I have some leftover address labels, but you can use any piece of tape that you can write on where the ink will not come off. Okay. Now you have right here is the positioning knob of the needle. So, you know, the needle can go in the center, it can go to the left or to the right. We're going to make our sewing guide to all three of these positions. Okay, now you have to keep in mind that when you're sewing, you're going to have to be mindful of where this gauge is so that you know which guide to use. But you know, I've seen these little things, magnetic things that you put on the plate where you use that, and sometimes depending on how heavy the fabric is, it moves. So I don't really like those. This is something that stays put on the machine. It's as permanent as you want it to be, and it will not interfere with the sewing of the fabric. So I've taken the presser foot off of the machine so you can see very, very clearly where the needle is going to go in. So just place it down. You see where it's going to go in. Okay. So we'll use this gauge here right up against the needle, and you'll be able to see where the line is going to be replaced. So this is at 5/8 of an inch right here. If we move the gauge closer, we'll get it to the 1/2 inch, and then 3/8 and so forth. Okay. Now, when you change the needle position, let's say if we put it over all the way to the left, obviously that's going to change. So instead of using the 5/8 line, you'll use the half line when the needle is all the way over to the left. Now, what I do is you can mark the lines at the bottom for when it's in the center. Make another, or mark another line like 5/8 here when it's all the way over to the left, 5/8 here when it's all the way over to the left, and so on, or to the right. And so you'll have different markings on each of the lines. Now these markings for me only take into account if it's in the center, but I know that I move it around all the time depending on what I want to do, but I just know how things go. I've been sewing for a long time. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to make your markings. Now the great thing about labels is that they are straight on all sides, which makes them perfect to make a guide. So we have our 8 markings on the ruler, so we'll just line it up against the label and make markings every 1/8 of an inch. Then we can also do the same at the top. But since we're going to be connecting them, so you might not even need to do this step as long as you keep it straight. Then you'll use the ruler to connect each line. Making sure that everything is perfectly straight, even if you need to use the gauge here to make sure that each line is connected perfectly. So with that, we're ready to transfer it to the machine. Okay, so now with this particular machine, right up against the feed dog, if you put it right there, this first line is automatically going to be 3/8. So, and this is with the gauge, the needle gauge in the center. Okay, so we can even test it out. Put our gauge here at 3/8. Hope you guys can see it. 3/8. Place it up against the needle. Goes right up against that first line. So what we can do for when it's in the center, we put it in this right in the center of the label, 3/8. I'm going to take this off. Okay. So we can mark it 3/8 right here. Okay. So that's in this, notice how this is in the center of the label. All right. So let's say that we move the needle all the way over to the left. Okay, here's the gauge. I'm going to move it all the way over to the left. Okay, so now the needle has moved. The needle has moved all the way over. Okay, so if we put this up against the feed dog, okay, it's no longer at 3/8. That same line. That same line has now moved to 4/8, which is a half. So what we can do is we can mark it at the bottom 1/2. So obviously, if we're going to move the needle all the way over to the right, it's going to be less than 3/8. I don't think you really need to, you're not going to be using that measurement that much, so it's not really necessary, in my opinion, to make a markup here, but you can just make a mental note. So now obviously, if you're moving 1 more eighth, this 3/8 for the middle becomes 1/2. 1 more over will become 5/8. And then after 5/8, you're going to move 1, 2, 3 over, and that'll be 1 inch. Okay? You'll use 7/8, which will be right here, this one here. But I think that I don't need to mark them. By the time you're sewing, if you're doing it for a while, you'll be able to know these things by heart, actually. So down here, if this is going to be a half, the next one over, 1 more eighth, will be 5/8. 1 more over 6/8, 1 more over 7/8. 1 more over will be 1 inch. Okay, so you can actually, if you're on the metric system, you could, it's the same thing. The centimeters will be listed here for all of my European watchers, but we're in the United States, so we have to be different from the world. So that's why I did this in inches, but you can apply it to centimeters as well. Okay, so once you've got all of the markings, you simply place it on the machine up against the feed dogs. Do obviously, not to put them on the feed dogs. And then, and there you go. You've got your marker.